and think it through, but actually why would they be comfortable talking to people? Why would that be part of the skill set they automatically had?
God, Josh. It's Christmas time. Hello everyone. Joining me today, a very educational episode, and I'm hoping that this is going to actually be super useful for pretty much anyone listening, I think it's fair to say, is a person behind a company with an amazing story, amazing mission, and funnily enough it's called theWholestory. So Josh, would you like to introduce yourself any more than I introduced yourself right now?
No, that was very good. I'm Josh Gaillemin. I am one of the two founding members of theWholestory with Lily Pender. And yeah, we look at how to use story and storytelling in work. And what is it that helps people connect to you and to your message from storytelling? And how can you learn that? And yeah, make it a natural part of what you do.
How did you find out that you're good at that and this is going to be your path in life and this is what you're going to be doing?
I was brought up by hippie parents, so if anyone had said I was going to do storytelling, I would have very much said no. That was not what I wanted. The velvet cloaks, the silly facial hair. I didn't shave, but you know, the kind of moustache. I didn't like it at all. And then I went to uni, and then there was a course on storytelling, which I just did as part of it. And I didn't think any more of it. And then I just kind of fell into it, really. So a friend asked me if I wanted to teach with him at the Horniman Museum. We're in South East London, just up the road. And I said, yeah, okay. And neither of us had taught, neither of us had worked in a museum, neither of us had worked with children. The first time I set foot on the museum, I was paid to run a session. And it went really well. And we thought, let's do some more.
That's me now.
And then I became their storyteller for 20 years, freelance there, doing all their tours and things. And then with a friend, I was invited to go to Mumbai to teach for a month for an acting school. And a friend of mine said, oh, can I come? And I said, no, this is my baby. And she came because she's very convincing. And that was Lily. And yeah, we went to Mumbai. It was an unmitigated disaster. I was heartbroken. Lily saw all the positives, and one of the main positives is that we really liked working together. So we said, right, let's quit our jobs and work together. So
I don't know if you could hear that, guys, but very fittingly we have Last Christmas playing right now in the background. I mean,
yeah.
Okay, wow, Mumbai. How did Mumbai come to be?
Because I had been dumped not much earlier, and I was on holiday with my mum like a good son. And my mum is a drama teacher, and my mum and I ran some workshops, and it was so much fun. And we covered so much ground in one day. I thought, my God, people are so open here. They're really, you're not spending half the day getting to know each other and trusting, and it was just like, let's go. And I thought in a day we covered like a week's worth of stuff, and they said come back for a month. And I was like, oh my God, what could we do in a month? Turns out you can do 2 days work in a month, because actually people have got other stuff to do. And there's different festivals and different things happening. So we got 2-3 days work done. And yes, I was very rigid at the time. I was like, I had a timetable for 30 days in a row. And Lily was much better at being like, this is what's in front of us, this is what we're dealing with. And actually it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And it taught me just to let go of my need. It's not that I was a control freak, I just wanted it to work. I didn't want to turn up and just have everything fall apart and not know what to do. So I had 100 contingencies. And actually I had to learn that they are contingencies and they're there to help, not to be followed. And that took me a long time, because I think I'm very messy, but I think certain things need to be structured for me, and work is one of them.
So you mentioned Lily a lot. Hello, if you're watching. I think everyone needs a Lily in business.
God.
Everyone needs a Lily. Get yourself a Lily if you don't have one. How are you two different from each other? So there's a little bit you told us already, but how is that relationship working? As to what are your strengths, what are Lily's strengths, and how does that work?
Lily is more academic than me, so we met at university. I stopped at the BA. The idea of writing another essay just I mean, I still get I still get panic dreams about it now. I'm 48. Whereas Lily has done all sorts of post work and masters and all sorts of things, and actually she's very good at looking at things and pulling it apart and understanding it. At the start of it, she was sort of the observation and the brains, and I was the energy that kept it all going a little bit. But now it's much more equal. She's great at running workshops. There's nothing I love more than designing work with her, coming up with new ideas. I'm very much like, this is how it is. I've had this great idea, we're going to do it. Lily's like, is it? We could do this, we could do this, we could do this. And I'm like, no, I had my idea. This was my idea. And she's like, yeah, I'm not sure it's a good idea. We'll look at 10 different things, and then she'll show me this one. I'm like, do you know what, Lily, you're absolutely right. This is my idea, the one, or your idea, but the one I'm going to go with. Let's go down this line. So we're very different. She's very inquiring. She checks everything. She's an explorer, whereas I'm like, I'm not troubled by thoughts. It's very decisive in that way. So, but actually it works very well together.
Yeah.
Like in workshops, some people really like the way, she shows that everything's been considered, that all thoughts have gone into it, everybody's brought in. Other people are like, how long is this going to take? Some people like that I'm up front and I seem to be very confident in what I know. Other people are like, when will you shut up and let me speak? So it's two sides, and I think that's part of what works so well. We've operated out of an office in her house we went to India in 2004, so it's coming up to 20 years, and I've lost the ability really to think without her almost. We've just been doing everything together for so long and being in the same space for so long that I found, during lockdown and things, I found it very hard to work from home, to be on my own around things. We would have like screens up sometimes to try and be in the same space. But I found it very difficult, actually. I like to collaborate, and if you find the person with whom you collaborate well, I mean, you said everyone needs a Lily, it's my Lily, but it's more that everyone needs to find someone that they work with.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the greatest moments of good fortune I've had in my life, really, have that, because that's the longest relationship I've ever had, and the most successful. And the most satisfying,
For sure.
So,
and probably the most equal and fair, because I imagine that there is a lot of respect that you gain for one another through working together.
I think it different people do different bits at different times. I've got 2 children half the time. Lily's got 2 children. We work out, we've always been very understanding of each other, or we've certainly grown into that. And I mean, I look at other people's working lives and I think, what fools, what fools. And we go into to businesses and to organisations and things, and so often the bit that is falling apart in their organisation is the culture or the behaviour, which is most easily demonstrated through the way they communicate with each other, and the amount of internal politics and everything. And I just look at them and think, what is wrong with you? But then it's because there's more than 2 people.
Yeah.
And
of course, and it gets complicated when that happens, right?
Too complicated.
Different dynamics, and then you multiply that by hundreds.
I can't imagine.
That's
I genuinely can't imagine.
Yeah.
But it's lucky to have taken a risk in doing this at a time when neither of us had anyone depending on us or any sort of financial dependence. We could just try it, and actually to have a chance to give it a go like that is huge. It's huge. But you probably only get 1 or 2 goes, because if you're either with the wrong person or it fails, it's it is tough, and it's feast or famine. You've got times where times are so good.
That's true.
So good, and you're dying, and other times where it just bottoms out and there's no rhyme or reason to it. So that side can be interesting, but I mean, you kind of get used to it over the years.
Who's better in a crisis? Who's better?
Oh, Lily, because I'm emotionally incontinent. So
it sounds like it isn't your words. You've been told that.
No, I think I probably feel things unnecessarily largely.
Is that because of the hippie parents?
No, I don't think so. I think, it's a blessing and a curse at the same time.
I think, you know what? Yeah, I would say so, because I'm sure for you everything is more intense, but as long as you have that anchor, you have that person who can grab you, be like, this is what's happening and this is how we're going to deal with that. It's also nice to allow yourself to feel, you know. I think feelings, uncomfortable feelings especially, make you teachable, make you navigate through life, learn the lessons quicker, because you do not want to be back in that place.
Yeah, I've never been one to learn the lessons quickly.
That's very hard to give you credit.
Yeah. No, God, no. I've got to know myself a bit. So, yeah. It's not. I don't have an issue with it, but it's not a. Yeah, my life doesn't work out as in the right sort of romantic comedy way.
I don't think anyone's it. So if we go back to the whole story, obviously you guys discovered you were great together, you know what you want to do, you're great at this specific skill. How do you then translate that to going out in the world, helping companies, and there's some really impressive companies in your portfolio. So you worked with huge companies, smaller companies, some, you know, really well-known brands. How was that transition? How did you walk into your very first company and went like, okay, I'm going to sort this out?
Well, we started off not thinking of that. When we came back from India, we were like, we like working together. Let's just work together.
Yeah.
So I used to print up little flyers, which I stuck onto trees, saying we are running a storytelling course, learn to do traditional storytelling, and we'd book a hall and charge people enough to pay for the hall, like a 6-week course or a weekend course. And we did a bunch of these, and looking back on it, reverse engineering the story, we were learning our craft. But actually, that's not at all what it was at the time. We just wanted to work together, and we wanted to do more of this and to see what could come from it. And one day, one guy said, I'm finding this so useful at work. And you see, then he was immediately like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. Whereas I was looking at him going, you're doing a story about how the lion got his roar. How is that useful? I'm so literal. How can that be useful for you? It doesn't make sense to me. And he's like, because, you know, I had to give a talk to my team. I didn't have my notes. I'd learned what I wanted to say. I knew the purpose of where it was going. I used a bit of descriptive language in there. I was like, that would definitely be, no, I just taught you that. But we were like, okay, so this is a thing, and we went into Google and said storytelling for business, and a bunch of stuff came up, and we went, okay, and we just emailed the people who came up and said, hello, we do this. And our first job was with the NHS at a conference for 300 people for an hour just after lunch.
Okay.
So we'd not done a business one before, we'd not done a conference, we'd not done an hour thing, we'd never been mic'd up.
And here we are doing awful.
Oh my God. And I was such an idiot, I was such a purist. I thought, no, we don't use microphones, the resonance of the voice. So no one could hear us. And it was awful. And all I could do was see people who weren't paying attention and who were talking to their mates because they're at a conference, they've not seen them for months, they've just eaten, and there are 2 people they can't hear on the stage. And how dare they talk to each other when I'm on the stage? It was awful. So I found that very hard, and then at the end people are like, that was great, it's the graveyard slot.
You're lying.
You just spot it. But then you receive your feedback, and you receive, so on 300 people, maybe 70 people, so you get 70 what went well, little comments, and then you get 70 negative comments.
That hurts.
I mean, the first time you read that, I can't do anything about the food, I can't do anything about, no, but it was awful to read
my
through.
shirt did not match my shoes.
And I thought, that's it, we'll never work again. And the people were like, that went great, that was excellent, you did this and this and this, and people understood this, and I spoke to this person, and we were like, okay, let's give it a go. And that was it, we gave it a go. So off the back of that, there was an organisation called Arts in Business who put artists in companies and sort of business people like on the boards of arts companies and things. And they did a day saying, learn to pitch or something. We sat there going, okay, how much do you charge? What do you say? And they were looking at us like we're crazy. And at the end they said, there was like 20 people in the room. They said, come. We think you're great. Like, really? And they booked us in with EY, with Ernst & Young, like a few weeks later for an undisclosed fee that was more than going and doing storytelling in museums. Mm-hmm. And we were delighted, and we've worked on and off with EY for the last 18 years, But more importantly, when people would go, what do you do? And you said you worked in storytelling. oh, you've got good children.
Oh,
And
that's so cute.
I just found that a little bit frustrating.
Of course, yeah.
But you could turn and go, no, we're working with EY right now. And they go, okay, right. That's interesting. And it just meant we changed the story or the narrative of that really quickly. Made it so much easier for people to take it seriously.
Of course.
Yeah, so we had the NHS, EY, and the National Trust as 3 of our first 5 clients.
That's a big start.
Well,
That's a big start.
It's pointless name dropping, but all it meant is people went, oh, okay.
You're
But
legit.
for us, we were able to show, look, you can work with businessy businesses, you can work with museum-y type heritage places, you can work with public sector.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to learn to speak, or rather
sure.
to remember how to speak well in a connected way. Look at the range, and that's actually continued till today. We've always got a really good, wide selection of people we work with, which is great. It's a really interesting.
So tell me, if there's anyone watching us right now and they, for example, run a company, and then any company involves some form of speaking to one another, whether that's to clients or to employees, what sort of things, specifically, what can you actually improve through the workshops with you? What would be the outcome?
It depends what people have. So we're doing quite a lot of work on leadership right now, because people get promoted, sometimes out of a more practical role into leadership, or going up a step again, and actually, how do they might not be comfortable speakers. So the comms department sends you a sheet. You're meant to be able to read that sheet, ingest it, find what's relevant to your team, and share it with them.
So
that
natural,
would be ideal.
convincing, and charismatic.
Well, yeah, would be good. Would be a good start. But that's actually, why would you expect someone to do that who had a role in a more practical aspect of the organisation, and who's a specialist at what they do, and who's been promoted, and who can strategise around that and think it through? But actually, why would they be comfortable talking to people? Why would that be part of the skill set they automatically had?
Of course.
However, they're probably great at talking to their friends. They're probably great at talking if they have a partner or family, to colleagues once they're outside and had a coffee or a glass of wine or a beer or whatever, and just really great at talking. But then within this environment, it just gets a little bit tight and a bit locked up, and people do like a data dump on you. This is the information I need you to. It's not even this is the information I need you to have. This is the information I need to get rid of. And once I've got rid of it, I have done my share.
It's not my responsibility anymore.
It's not my responsibility anymore. But what possible use is that? The point is, I have to give it to you in a way that makes sense to you as to why you have received it, so that you know what you're meant to do. That's the only way it makes sense. So our workshops will help with that sort of thing. How can you work out what you need to say? So you're not looking for the story. You've got a particular subject or topic you need to cover. You've got a particular audience to whom you need to speak, and you need to work out from that, what is the story that would connect this message to this audience? What do they need to know now? Not what do they need to know full stop. What do they need to know now that was relevant to them, so that because you're not telling them a story, you're telling them a chapter of their story, because they're going to do the next bit. So you tell it, you hand it over with clear instructions as to what happens next, and then it's theirs, and they have to go and do the next bit. And that's the case in almost everything you say to people in work.
Of course, yeah.
But that's not how people see it. They don't necessarily think, what is the outcome that I want from this conversation? What is the outcome that I want from this presentation, from this report back to the board? Is it just giving information, or is there an action required off the back of it? And what is that action? Because people think, I want them to be inspired, I want them to be engaged. Great. And then what? You could inspire someone till they're blue in the face, and then they get back to their desk and they've got 48 emails, and they're dealing with 48 emails, and your inspiring inspiration is gone. It's just gone. Why would they do anything with it? If you don't have, I want to inspire them, I want them to think things, I want them to feel things, so that they are motivated to do something. And if you're not clear with yourself what you want to be, what you're motivating them to do, then how the hell are they meant to know what they're meant to do? If you're not clear with it.
So I know there are more people like yourself, not very many, but people that naturally have that gift, right? Naturally are able to convey what they want to say.
I hate public speaking. I don't do public speaking at all.
But even if it isn't public speaking, actually being able to talk one-to-one with somebody and convey what you're trying to say. And I've met a few people like that, so I know they exist. But then there's a large amount of people, probably I'm going to go on a wild one and say larger than the former, that don't have that skill set. Two questions of that. Can you recognize that person immediately from speaking to them? Now, years down the line, 20 years doing what you do.
Monica, can you? And the answer is yes, isn't it? You hear some people and they speak well, and you hear some people and they don't speak well.
Yeah.
Now, I think another thing that's interesting is we don't all have the same taste.
That's true.
So we think there are good speakers and bad speakers.
True.
Whereas actually there are people who speak well in our type or style.
Who can connect with our language.
Yes, because it's the same. Think of comedy, think of playwrights, think of authors. You know, oh, I love this, it's brilliant. God, it's wordy, it's absolutely awful. It's the same writing, it's the same storytelling. And with speaking, it's the same. There are certain things people like. Don't be in someone's face.
That's universally, don't do that.
Don't really look them in the eye. I don't know, don't like say like all the time, like, because you're like a bit like nervous, like, you're not quite like sure what you want to. You can shape the world around you, or you can show that you're anxious. There's different things. So if you keep bleeding out stuff that isn't helpful, then people generally won't like that. But otherwise, it's different tastes for different people. Some people love the way Lily speaks. Some people love the way I speak.
Yeah.
Some people love the way both of us speak. But it's not going to be as many because it's different styles.
Yeah.
And we all have learning styles. We have listening styles.
How do you choose who's going to speak?
I don't. There's 2 people in my company. We don't. So we run workshops
Together.
Either together. Oh, it's in which of us is going to. No, whoever's free.
Oh, I see.
Whoever's free, or whoever has had the best connection with that client.
Yeah.
Or if we've had experience and we know that they're particularly one style, harder for one thing or another. But generally, whoever's free. Because within the group, there'll be people who prefer me or Lily. Because it's nothing's homogenous. And actually, one of the nice things of having worked with Lily for so long is that I can steal some, you can appropriate some of her, not quite, I wish, but you can think, for example, there's lots of things she said that I find really impressive that I can quote her on and bring her in on. There's things, ways that she's corrected me about the way I do things that I can take on board. So there's lots of ways that you can almost represent someone in a space who's there. But it's more about trying to, and one of the things we try and teach is to notice what kind of communicator you are and what are different things that other people would like. So you want to have your authentic voice, you want to be yourself. When you hear someone speak, you want to hear what they're saying, but it's what they're saying. So you want to know who they are and what does it mean to them. Otherwise it has no value whatsoever. So when you talked about like charismatic or charming, actually you don't meet that person. Someone who's charismatic and charming is just flattering you and making you feel good. Oh my god, this person's really handsome and likes me. That's all it is, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah, it's true.
Aren't I lucky that they want to talk to me because they keep making you feel good? Do you meet the person? No, you meet this oily veneer that's on the outside. But when you're speaking, people want to meet you. So you need to have that authenticity of who am I, where do I stand with the material, where do I stand in my relationship to the people I'm speaking to, whilst also noticing that if you're just you, that won't connect with everyone. So how can you stay yourself but still adapt slightly the techniques of the way you speak so that it's more likely to work with different people?
What was the most challenging work or most challenging day you've ever had when everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong and you kind of were really struggling?
I won't name the client because that would be incredibly unprofessional, but it's somebody who had hosted stuff for us before and who I had the beginnings of a really nice relationship with. It was a pilot program for their new organisation, and it would have been really helpful if they had introduced me at the start and been there so that people had an understanding of why I was there, because it was a 4-hour workshop. Some people came in an hour length, which
So
makes it
wasn't
very
really-
difficult to because there's lots of steps to cover.
Cool.
So then you're trying to catch people up whilst do things. But also people weren't really told why they were here. So they thought rather than it be a pilot for us to get to work things but it was for their benefit, they had it in their heads that they were testing me so as to then be able to adapt and change what was happening. But that hadn't been, we weren't designing a workshop, we were having a first go to see where things were going. I appreciate piloting is slightly co-design, there is co-design at the end, but not during it. And it all kicked off halfway through this guy, because also they weren't told why they were selected. So people felt insulted that they'd been brought to something that I'd never observed them speaking. I didn't know their specific needs. They were quite senior, they certainly didn't have time for this sort of thing. And one person was just very challenging in, without swearing, basically saying, this is bullshit. And it going down that line. And I was like, okay, well, we'll have a break and I'm happy to have a chat. And then someone else started defending me, which was very sweet, but I didn't want to be defended in that moment.
Sit down. It's not the right moment.
But which was lovely, lovely. And it was just going round in circles, and I was like, you've missed a whole chunk of stuff. Of course it makes less sense to you, but let me catch you up during the break with things and have a conversation. But I left thinking,
why? Drained probably.
And it's just frustrating because actually that's not the most productive use of a pilot. With a pilot session, it's interesting to have people who are keen and who are going to start talking about it in a positive way, but who are observant and challenging, who can then say, this was brilliant, this. Do you know what, we covered this in a thing recently, so we don't need to use that, but I love that, could have a bit more time here, or rather than do we need this kind of... I did a course like this 7 years ago. Okay, great, that's fantastic. I'm so glad to hear it.
This is what we were talking about just before we started recording, right? It's so incredibly important to understand the value of what you're going to do. So it's not put in a kind of threatening, belittling manner, but actually understanding, no, this is for us to learn. We all collectively can improve, and actually this can open up new possibilities that we maybe didn't even know were there.
A day of training is a day of training.
Exactly.
And because I'm an egomaniac, I think it's a wonderful thing.
It's the best way.
And if I come, or if Lily's there, it will blow your mind. However, I was taught there's another person, Jo, who hired us, and she was an amazing client at the NHS. We worked with her for over 10 years. Absolutely amazing. I've never seen someone who was so good. To just watch her facilitate a session, it was just heavenly. Absolutely beyond amazing. But she talked about a couple of things, one of which was it's not your responsibility for everything to work all the time. You need to have create collective responsibility in the space, which I found very useful. But more importantly, a workshop is you laying out a bunch of ideas for people to have a crack at. That is one day. There is all the build-up before, when the organisation has to get them ready.
For sure.
What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Why have you been chosen? What do we want to get from this? How does it fit in with all of the other changes or strategy that's happening? That's a lot of work. That's more than an email saying you've been booked in on this, which is the majority of things. Then there's the day, and then there's the bit on the other side, which is even longer, when the line manager supports you by knowing what the hell you did, talking about it with you, seeing which bits are easy, which are harder, what you want to practice, who you can buddy up who's also on it to give feedback on, all of that. Days and days and weeks possibly even at that end. There's only one day in the middle. Now, if you don't do that day well, then all the stuff afterwards is going to be very hard and all the stuff before will sound phony.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it well, that's all you can do. Right? And the bits either side, when they're not done, and I would say, and this is going to be harsh, but at least half the sessions we've delivered over almost 20 years, I think we're missing the bit at the front. In fact, I'd go, when I said almost half, that was far too generous. I would say more than half.
More than half, probably.
We're missing the section at the front, or doing it properly. And I can't speak for the bit after, but again, I would probably safely say more than 3/4 didn't get the bit after. And then people say, well, training doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, much of it doesn't work, of course. But it doesn't have any chance of working with the people you want it to work with, because the people who can just pick it up from sitting in a session are probably the people who are actually quite sparky and confident and capable, and who probably will get lots from it but didn't need it.
Yeah.
So,
can we talk a little bit about the pandemic? We spoke a little bit, and there's a very interesting thing I want you to touch on, which is the new possibilities for your company and a new avenue that COVID has opened. I know you mentioned that COVID wasn't the easiest of times for you, but from the whole story point of view, how has that changed the way you do things, and what kind of can you do for the companies that are now, either partially or fully remote?